So, how are you feeling? I mean, you're a mom, this is your livelihood. Um, what's your life like dealing with this right now?
Um, it's incredibly stressful. Yeah, I can't pretend that it's not. It has been weighing heavily on my mind for almost a year, and um, it's while it's nice to kind of have gone public and get support, it doesn't change the fact that it's like I have two young children that I'm caring for, and this is my entire life. And it's a cause that I care deeply about. And I just feel like I'm kind of put in between the two. And yeah, it's very, very stressful.
If you're not subscribed to us at rebelnews.com, then you may not know that Rebel News isn't just a news source that isn't afraid to give you the other side of the story. We also fight for freedoms, all freedoms, including freedom of speech and freedom of expression, both two types of freedoms that are rapidly fading away in Canada, especially if you're a medical professional. That's one of the reasons we have an important petition at stopmedicalsilencing.com. Our doctors, our nurses, our care workers, you name it, have a political muzzle strapped across them that keeps them in line from speaking out against the mainstream narrative, even if they think what they have to say could save lives. This has been heightened during life with COVID-19. Now, the thing is, this report isn't about COVID. It's still about the censorship and the intimidation of a health professional, a nurse in particular. Meet Amy Hamm. She's a nurse, like I just said, but she also happens to be an activist who is currently under investigation by her governing body as a nurse. Why? Well, because she's been quite vocal in speaking out about rights to protect women, give them things like safe spaces. Except here's where the trouble comes in, and the cancel culture mobsters come in to shut Amy down, this mother of two. You see, Amy also points out some of the risks to women in certain vulnerable spaces when trans rights tend to trample on the rights of women. And in some cases, Amy points out where they do not happily coincide and brings up a discussion about that. And you guessed it, some are calling that transphobic. So I'm going to introduce you to Amy Hamm, as well as the lawyer who's representing her from the Justice Center of Constitutional Freedoms as they work through her current investigation. And again, before I do so, just go to stopmedicalsilencing.com on your device, pull it up, take 10 seconds to sign that petition for people like Amy, as well as any other medical professional who has something to say to the public, but is restrained from doing so.
All right. This is Amy Hamm, the transphobic nurse. No, I'm just joking. I'm totally joking, although it's not funny. Because that's basically how you're being labeled for some of the things that you've spoken out against when it comes to rights for women, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I've retained lawyers at the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms after I found out that my College of Nurses in BC, because my day job is as a nurse, they've been investigating me for my alleged transphobia for months. And this was after basically some people in the public complained about me because of my gender critical activities, including articles that I've written, an I Heart JK Rowling billboard I was involved with, my social media pages. And so these activists have targeted me at work, and they claim that I shouldn't be allowed to practice nursing because I would be a threat to gender diverse people, which is completely absurd. And none of it has to do with me performing my job. There are no patients involved. It's all just activists complaining about what I have done outside of work.
Now, for those of you who don't know already, we actually did a report on the billboard you just mentioned. It was almost a year ago, back in September. It was an I Heart J.K. Rowling billboard because, like yourself, J.K. Rowling has spoke out about some of these issues as well. Let's watch a clip of that right now.
It's the most visible, one of the more visible examples of free speech being curtailed, but not the worst. Like this, I mean, it's just a billboard, right? Honestly, it's just a billboard, but it's kind of an example of ridiculous things that are happening around free speech and around parents' rights, around women's rights, around children's rights. And those are very like quiet fights that aren't really being reported on, right? So I think that the value of something like this, going up, getting paint all over it, being taken down instantly, it's big and it's flashy and it's newsy and it gets people talking, and I think that's the real value of it.
And so what do you think about some of the stances J.K. Rowling has been taking lately?
She sucks. Like, it's terrible. As far as I know, she just says pretty despicable things about trans rights. She doesn't believe in trans rights. She seems like a terrible person.
I think J.K. Rowling is an honorary white male because of that, a cis white male, and should probably donate her breasts to a trans man who's transition or trans woman who's transitioning.
So, Amy, you're telling me that after that billboard went up, this whole time, I think it's been 11 months or so since then, you've been dealing with a backlash and a threat against your work, I guess, from things like that. Tell us some of the accusations specifically against you.
Yeah, so the complainants basically have said I'm transphobic and I'm a threat. One of them is anonymous and is allowed to remain anonymous because they said that I could retaliate against them, which is quite insulting to me because they're trying to make me lose my job. I'm a single mother with 2 young children, and they're trying to destroy my life, but they think that I would somehow retaliate against them. So I guess it was back in April now, I got a 332 page report from the BCCNM, which is the BC College of Nurses and Midwives. Mm-hmm. And it went through, it has a lot of the articles that I've written at different outlets and a lot of my social media posts. And this is supposed evidence of my transphobia. And some of it is, things as simple as that I have said that trans women are biological males.
So that's considered transphobic? Okay, yeah. So 330 pages. Now, do you know, so that was put together by a group of people, or including this one person whose identity is concealed because you're,
that was put together by the investigators for the College of Nurses.
Right.
And then, so the college is a regulatory body that gives me my license to practice. Mm-hmm. So that was from their investigators.
So let's talk a little bit about nurses like yourself, maybe some in the UK who have spoken out about similar things. What are some of the things that nurses, on other places in the world are saying that you've said?
I have gotten a lot of DMs from nurses, physicians, midwives, even care aides, and other kind of allied health professionals who have told me that they're glad that I'm taking a stand, that they agree with me, but that they're actually too afraid to say anything at their places of employment because they're worried that something similar would happen to them. How you can't blame them, honestly. So mm-hmm. It's, and I know I work with people and I have a lot of friends in the profession, and I know that this is not a minority opinion. Most people, especially people who have a science degree and work in healthcare, understand that biological sex is real. This isn't some kind of fringe idea that there are two sexes and that it's important to differentiate between the two. So it's it's scary for anyone to speak out. And I just feel like I'm being made into an example to try to prevent anyone else from speaking out.
Well, it's interesting you speak about the college and what that means to you as a nurse. One of the things that I've been working on here at Rebel News and we've been passionate about is helping, nurses and doctors be able to speak about things that they feel can help the community in ways that maybe are not politically correct to discuss. And so again, for the watchers, please go to Stop Medical Silencing, just pull out another screen or whatever, stopmedicalsilencing.com and sign the petition there. That's going to go out to the body you're talking about actually, and more. I want to go back to this person's identity being able to be hidden, although
Right.
they are part of trying to have you canceled. It reminds me of the frightening Bill C-36 that, the Liberal government is wanting to pass, a bill that is posed as an anti-hate sort of a bill and literally can penalize you just for someone believing you may offend them or hurt their feelings or something like this. But your example is showing that in a way that's already happening. Somebody can say something about you. They don't have to show their face or anything like that. What have you done? Like, what was used as reasoning to allow this person to have their identity held? Like, is there anything they said, Amy did this, so you know what, this is justified?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have no criminal record. I'm not a violent person. I'm a nurse, so anyways, there's no reason in that sense. I think that I'm not a lawyer, obviously, that there is legislation about protecting the confidentiality of people who complain about nurses. But I think that is supposed to be if you're a patient or the family member of a patient and there's some kind of confidentiality issue. And that is obviously not involved here at all. Like, these are people that I've never encountered while at work. It's just members of the public. So as far as I'm concerned, there is absolutely no reason that I shouldn't know who is complaining about me and trying to cancel me.
Well, in a somewhat related case to yours, we saw publication bans being used and extended and revised over and over with the BC father who spoke out against his child getting, sex cross hormones without his permission. So I have experienced that as well. As a journalist, I could be penalized for even reporting on those things wrong. And the doctors involved with those still have their identities, as confidential. So tell for people who aren't sure, tell us why it was important as a nurse to take this chance to speak out about these issues. What is it specifically that you're concerned about and that you think people need to be aware of?
Yeah, and I should make it clear that none of what I've done has ever been like, I'm doing this because I'm a nurse. I've always tried to keep my professional and my personal life very separate because I know that what I do is quite contentious. And I've been aware of the possibility that something like this could have happened. And, lo and behold, it has. So I wouldn't say it's because I'm a nurse, but I would say it's because I'm a rational person that understands science, and I'm a woman that understands the importance of women's sex-based rights, which are protected in the Canadian Charter. And I just witness, I've been seeing it for years, this kind of reversal of women's rights in Canada and all over the world because of gender identity ideology. So I never kind of expected that this would turn into a passion for me, but I don't know how to not speak out when I see things like biological males in women's prisons and rape shelters and like everyone is seeing in the news right now and competing in women's sports.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think it's transphobic to have discussions like that and raise concerns if you have them. I know my colleague David Menzies just did a report on a woman who, allegedly sexually assaulted a child in public in the park in Ontario. Now, most of the news articles that reported on this individual, put it on the screen here, left out the gender. They didn't say she, they didn't say miss or anything like that. They just said the name and rolled with it. But some, said woman. and we need to talk about these things when it comes to vulnerable kids being molested and where this individual is going to end up when it comes to prison. That's not transphobic at all. I wish you the best of luck for your case. Now, your lawyer is Lisa Bildy from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. We'll follow this case closely, but give us, where are you at with this right now in the case? What's happening to you?
Sure. The latest is that the BCCNM, shortly after we went public about what was going on, which was something that they had opposed, but again, they didn't provide any legal reason why I couldn't go public with their case against me.
Just made you feel like you couldn't?
Yeah, pretty much. And then shortly after going public, they responded with a consent agreement, which is essentially kind of their list of proposed punishment for me. I can't discuss what that is right now, but I have a couple of weeks, and the options at this point are either to agree to the punishment or to disagree. If I disagree, I go to a disciplinary hearing, and this case would likely then end up in the court system.
So how are you feeling? I mean, you're a mom. This is your livelihood. What's your life like dealing with this right now?
It's incredibly stressful. I can't pretend that it's not. It has been weighing heavily on my mind for almost a year. And while it's nice to kind of have gone public and get support, it doesn't change the fact that it's like I have 2 young children that I'm caring for, and this is my entire life, and it's a cause that I care deeply about, and I just feel like I'm kind of put in between the two, and it's very, very stressful.
Well, there you have it, Amy Hamm, as she continues to fight for her right to talk about gender issues that relate to transgender people. Again, if you want to know more about this, make sure you go to rebelnews.com. There you can give us your email and your phone number. Sometimes we're censored in a lot of ways, so by doing that, just make sure you get the reports. And Amy, is there somewhere people should go if they want to keep in touch with you specifically?
The easiest way is probably just that I'm on Twitter. And like I said, I've gotten so many amazing DMs. I appreciate them all. And my handle is at Preta_6.
Right. So this is Lisa Bildy with the JCCF. Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure.
Now tell us, why was it important for you to take on this case?
Well, we're seeing increasing examples of regulatory bodies for health professionals and others being used as sort of a tool for cancel culture. When people are not able to express their opinion in the public square on matters that have nothing to do with their patients, and then still have to face disciplinary action, it's really, it's just something disturbing that we need to nip in the bud.
Are you seeing, you are seeing lots of these, I guess a rising amount of them. What about in this situation where one of the individuals who had accusations against Amy was also able to have their identity not disclosed? What's going on there?
So they did disclose it to the college, but it was not disclosed to Amy. So she doesn't know who the person is who was making this complaint against her. She may know them. She may work with them. She may be a complete stranger. She doesn't know. But they weren't able to file an anonymous complaint with the college.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll be following this closely. Is there anything else you wanted to add about this case?
Well, when somebody is trying to speak up for something like women's rights, women and girls' rights, and be an advocate in this space, obviously it's a controversial issue these days. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it is. And so it's important that we be able to have conversations about the possible conflict of rights in an open way and be able to figure out, how do we balance all of these considerations? We only do that by having conversation, discussion, debate. We don't get anywhere by silencing opinions and by punishing people for having opinions that are perfectly valid to have. So I really hope that this is not a trend that continues, but to the extent that it does, we'll just keep fighting it.
Well, you and me both on both grounds, hoping it doesn't continue, as well as being prepared to fight it should it do so. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks so much for those of you who are going to stopmedicalsilencing.com. When you're there, can you take one more minute and send the petition off to a few friends? We have to stand with the brave doctors and nurses who have been speaking out.